Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. This is a horror podcast. We do talk about horror things, which could involve sensitive subjects, such as child abuse, rape, murder, F-bombs. That's not to say that's a guarantee. We just do have to get that disclaimer out of the way, because it is
just in case.
Just in case. But really, the show is more about psychological delve into what it is that people like about horror.
So, we have been doing a good job on keeping the guest list extensive, so we're not going to go into that. We are still doing our listen parties on Discord, 7 o'clock Eastern, and then 9 o'clock Eastern. Chris does a live stream of him working on his webcomic pieces. His webcomic is, the address is piecesofflesh.com. And also you can pick up my book, A Guide to the Recovery Toolbox, on Amazon and all kinds of other locations where you get ebooks and paperbacks and all that kind of fun stuff. But today we are talking to Mr. Stephen Kozeniewski, author best known for his works The Thing Under Your Bed and I almost said Chickens Never Die.
They don't.
Clickers never die. How's it going, Steve?
All right.
How are you guys prefer doing? Steve or Steven?
Either way is fine. I know professionally it's Steven, but you know.
Well, it's kind of funny that like we go through the whole thing of how do you pronounce your name, but 9 times out of the 10, while we're talking, because we're in a podcast, we don't bring up your name while we're talking to you. We just ask you questions directly, so it almost never even comes up. But it's good to ask.
Yeah.
Before we get into the meat of the interview, you want to let us know what you're currently working on?
Right now, I'm working on a short story collection, my first short story collection, which will be my published work from 2013 to 2016. And putting on my editor's hat, I'm also going to be releasing a novella from Kit Power later this year. So I'm going to be going to British Fantasy Con. This is October of 2024. And we'll be releasing Kit's new novella, Millionaire's Day, there. And I'm also working on a werewolf anthology, which we're going to call Strange New Moons. And the goal is to have werewolf stories that you've never read or heard before. And I think most people like werewolves, but I think the problem is, oh well, I've seen the Howling, and it's all been done and said before. So our idea was, let's get robot werewolves. Let's get every possible werewolf combination that we haven't seen. So if you guys are listening to this, when will this broadcast?
Probably in July.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So if you have any aspiring authors listening to the podcast, start polishing up your werewolf stories. Keep it under about 6,000 words, and we'll be opening for that in September of 24.
Cool. Basically, the conversation is going to be less about your body of work and more about your being a fan of the genre from childhood through adulthood. And then towards the end, we will wrap up by talking about any common themes that maybe keep cropping up and how that intersects with the genre in general. So, with that in mind, starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
Well, it's funny because I often tell this story, but I was quote unquote not allowed to watch horror as a child. Mm-hmm. So this was in I guess I'm dating myself, but all right, whatever. It was the 80s and 90s. And there was this big kind of moral panic about, the kids are watching stuff that's too violent and that kind of thing. So my mother was just a complete blockhead, and just to her, everything was slashers. Okay, so her opinion was that anything that was in the horror aisle of the video store, and again, I guess I'm dating myself with that reference. But her opinion was just, that's a slasher. You can't watch slasher. So anytime I would, try and pick up, Critters or something like that, she was, oh, no slashers. No, you can't watch that. That's slashers. Mm-hmm. So the kind of the loopholes that I had around that. So if it was a classic, if it was in some way literary. I could watch or read it. So, as a child, I watched a lot of the Universal monsters. I watched the old Frankenstein and the Bela Lugosi Dracula, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and King Kong, and the various Universal. There were actually a lot of sequels, as I recall, to some of those 30s and 40s movies, which kind of go unremarked upon today.
And then, later in the 50s, you
have Son of Kong and
Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah, Bride of Frankenstein was actually pretty good, but some of them were rather poor.
Yes. Yeah.
And the other exception I could somehow get away with was Godzilla movies. So I think somehow my parents got it into their heads that Godzilla was not a quote-unquote slasher.
Yeah, they're fun.
But so, yeah, I mean, I have lots of memories of a child of Godzilla versus Megalon and Monster Zero and all those old, 70s and 80s. I don't even know if kids watch those anymore.
Some of them do. There's more a growing interest in it thanks to the new Godzilla films, especially with things like Shin Godzilla and Godzilla -1. It's coming back.
Yeah, they're into Five Nights at Freddy's and what's the other one?
Oh, that's right.
Happy Time? Not Happy Time. Poppy something. Shoot, it's around the tip of my tongue. I can see the characters, but I can't think of the name. My nephew's into it. What else?
If I could get away with it, it was like folklore, mythology. If I could kind of couch things as like, oh, well, this is, I'm learning. So,
it's historical,
Yeah, exactly. But definitely, and of course, folks like Chris Triana and those kind of guys like freak out at me because I never saw, Friday the 13th or Jason or Freddy or I was flat out not allowed to watch that stuff, the Child's Play and those kind of things. And then when you come to it as a 20-something-year-old or 30-something-year-old, you're like,
this is
yeah. So I've caught up on some of those, but I'm definitely not the kind of guy that can be like, oh, Jason X is better than Child's Play 4 or whatever. Like I just do not have that kind of close personal connection with it. But ask me about like a Japanese mythological creature, and I've probably read all those encyclopedias of folklore, mythology, and that kind of thing. About the fairies were scared of iron, and the kappa in Japan had the water bowl in his head, and that kind of thing. So,
and the demon with the butthole, with the eye in its butthole. The classics.
The classics, yeah.
That is a real Japanese demon.
Yes, I'm sure.
That has an eyeball in its butthole.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris has got. I know Chris has got some gaps in his knowledge as well, particularly stuff predating the 80s.
Mine's kind of the opposite. I grew up on all the slashers. Fun fact: I was not allowed to watch Nightmare on Elm Street because I grew up on Elm Street.
Interesting.
So some of the ones that you mentioned by name, Creature from the Black Lagoon. What'd you like about that one?
Yeah,
watching it in black and white was kind of had an artistic style to it and a feel to it that was, unusual. So it wasn't exactly like compelling dialogue or anything like that, but dealing with the creature and the bathing beauty and that kind of thing, it was kind of similar to King Kong in that sense, like the thoughts behind what really makes something a monster and that kind of thing. Yeah, that was a good one. I really have not revisited it.
Can it really be so bad if it appreciates beauty?
Right, that kind of thing.
What about Godzilla versus Megalon?
I don't know why, but I feel like I must have watched that one more than any of the others. Maybe it was just one of the ones that was at my video store. But yeah, I probably watched that 15, 20 times as a kid. There's just this power differential. Like I think it's probably well known and well documented that kids like dinosaurs and kids like kaijus and kids like cowboys and stuff because a child feels powerless, and then they see a creature that can destroy the city and destroy the adults, and they're like, oh, I wish I was that, because if I had the power to do that, who could stop me? So there was something very cool about just Godzilla in general. but yeah, it was. I'm sure it had a lot to do with the power differential of like, wow, Godzilla's cool and powerful, and nobody tells him what to do, and nobody tells him to go to bed.
9 p.m.
Yep.
Gotta go.
Which is funny when you think about it, because like you have that allure of the strength and power of something that has no restrictions, like Parrot saying 9 p.m. But you don't really think about the fact that it's like, oh yeah, he's really cool and killing hundreds of thousands of people as he destroys this city, but it's cool.
So you mentioned your mother at least was not a horror fan. Was there anybody in your family who were horror fans?
No, not really explicitly. I think that as I'm getting older and that kind of thing, and I understand there's a tendency, especially in our community, to want to call everything horror and to attribute everything to horror. And yeah, okay, I got it. If it's really important to you to pretend like everything is horror, if that's what you're looking for, then you'll always be able to find that element in there.
Right. It's like the fear-love spectrum on Donnie Darko.
Yes. Wow. Good reference. I haven't thought about. Yeah, that's an excellent comparison there. I'm not afraid anymore. So, but even saying that, and I just wanted to preface that so that I don't come off sounding like a snooty horror fan or whatever. But even so, I do think there are definitely things like you look at Alien or Aliens, and it's horror. Now, it's considered science fiction by the world at large because horror has a big red H stitched into its shirt,
the scarlet letter.
Yes, exactly. But realistically, something like Aliens or Terminator that are considered science fiction, broadly speaking, are really have strongly have horror elements. So in that sense, my father, he introduced me to all these things. We watched Star Trek. That so we would watch things like Aliens, and I remember being terrified, just absolutely having nightmares and stuff about the end of Aliens, where the Queen Alien comes back and kills Bishop, and you're like, oh, I thought it was all over, and that's like a classic horror trope there. Yeah, exactly. But I'm not sure he would ever say, oh yeah, I was a horror fan and that kind of thing.
Right. Did you have any scary dreams when you were a kid, or any reoccurring nightmares?
Oh wow. I mean, I did. I'm trying to think if I can remember them. Mostly had issues. One of the things that I can recall being scared and dreaming about was things at school, like being late at school and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I do remember, and this was a real life thing that happened to me one time. There was some kind of party at a roller skate rink, and I just got absorbed in the arcade. I didn't realize that the party was over and everybody had left. and I turned around and I was like essentially abandoned. And I was like, what's going on? Where are my parents? And then of course my parents come storming in and they're like, why aren't you out? It's 5:00. What are you doing? Mm-hmm. So when that happened, I had this real kind of fear and sense of anxiety about being stuck somewhere late, or like missing my bus or missing my pickup and that kind of thing. And I seem to recall dreaming about that quite a bit, although I guess that's not really very exciting or horrifying or whatever. But
no, it's still interesting, yeah, because I mean it almost lends to something that comes up in a couple of our podcasts called the liminal space, right, Steve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A place that's normally a normal space or a known space, but when you're in there in a different time or a different setting, it's upsetting or just disturbing.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm kind of amused that you had these dreams about being late at school in childhood. Like I would expect that to come later in life, because that is something that happens to come up quite a bit later in life. So for you to be having kind of nightmares about that already in early childhood, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that story I was telling about the roller rink, I think I was 7 or 8 or something when that happened. And it was just kind of like, it was just kind of a typical thing, like a little kid gets distracted, but then everybody's screaming at me about it. It's probably more
that's
like
when the scary part comes in.
Yeah, it was probably more like I didn't understand what I had done wrong, and it was just this real sense that I had done something so horribly wrong, and all I was doing was looking at an arcade box, you know?
Well, that's also an interesting take in that I have talked to more than one person who have had similar experiences in childhood, but for them, it was a fear of being abandoned, like I've been left behind.
Right.
And so for you, it's more, I mean, I thought you were kind of going in that direction, but then you kind of pivoted and we're talking about how your parents are mad at you because you didn't come out and they were worried about you.
Yeah.
So at least it seems like it was, maybe you kind of started to go in that direction, but that got shortcut or short circuited. So maybe it wasn't as bad as some of the people I've talked to. One of our secondary questions then is, was there ever a time in your real life when you were terrified of something as a kid? Would that be what you would go to with that? Or is there something else that you would think is even more important to discuss than that?
Oh, yeah. I guess I ruined that with that story then.
No, I would say you assisted it.
Right.
Yeah. Or there may have been something even more important to discuss, or not. You tell me.
It's weird that that's the one that jumps out at me.
It's okay.
I don't. Yeah, nothing else is jumping out at me about being.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
If that's the worst that you got, that's not bad.
Yeah, exactly.
So flipping that last question around, was there ever a time in your childhood when you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
Yeah, I definitely. I have this weird memory. I was probably 3 or 4, and I remember my father and I were building a boat. You know, a model boat.
Okay.
And basically, we just.
Sorry, I was picturing you building like a full-size boat.
Oh yeah,
used by the idea
that specifying that makes a difference.
Well,
right.
Well, not just that, but imagining you building a full-size boat and the verbiage of me and my father. I'm like, you weren't building shit at 3, 4.
Well, exactly. Exactly.
Sorry, tools, that counts.
Yes.
And to be fair, even this boat that was probably a foot or two long, I'm sure I did not contribute all that much to it.
Right.
But we were just building it. And that night, I was just like tired and exhausted from, working on the boat. And it was the summer, and it was like that perfect, cool time of summer when you have your windows open and the air was just perfect. And I just remember feeling this total sense of contentment. And when I tell this story, depending on how like hippy dippy you are or whatever, like I'm not particularly, but I do remember feeling like I had something akin to an out of body experience, because I remember looking down at myself from up in the room, and it was almost like I was so content, like my spirit, rose out and was looking back down on myself. And, I mean, in retrospect, I'm sure that was just some kind of, positive feeling, like what you were getting at, Steve, like a sense of bliss and contentment and that kind of thing. But that's kind of the closest I ever came to, like, astral projection or whatever you want to call that.
So the next 2 questions I'm going to ask are also a pair. And this time I'm going to start with a negative one so that we can end on the positive one. But
okay.
Do you remember the first person you hurt?
The first person I hurt?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. We're really delving into my psyche here.
That's what we do.
Yeah. Okay. So
he's like, for better or worse.
Yeah. Did you mention at the beginning of the interview, Steve, that pass was an option? Pass is an option.
Yes.
Oh, okay. No. I don't want to pass just because something might be tough to talk about. So when I was relatively young, I was probably in 2nd grade or something like that. I forget what it was all about, but I had I exchanged angry words with my teacher, and of course, you get in trouble for that.
Mm-hmm.
And she said I had to write an apology and have it signed by my parents.
Uh-oh.
And so, this is just for a child, this is like an enormous, overwhelming feeling.
Right.
And I was my little head was running, and I was like, how can I not do that? How can I get away with doing this? And I was like, I feel like I could probably fake my parents' signature, but I didn't really, I wasn't really 100% sure if I could. And I thought I had this great idea. I was like, oh, what if I tell my father that I'm trying to figure out how to do my signature, right? So I was at this age where I noticed that everybody, like, the doctor and everybody, like, they have a signature, and we had learned cursive. I know, again, I'm going back, dating myself with all this stuff, because kids don't learn cursive anymore, right? So I knew how to write my name in cursive, but I also understood that everybody just had a signature that was just their own thing that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to my father with a blank piece of paper, and I was like, Can you show me your signature? Yeah. I thought I was so clever. And he was like, well, no, you have to figure that out by yourself. You have to learn how, and he didn't do it. And I was like, fuck.
And I'm sure you hid that. I'm sure you hid that reaction really well too.
I did. And I still lied. Actually, I do not come off well in this story.
You're a kid.
I still lied, and what I did was, my teacher's name was Luann such and such. I won't even say what her name was. And I wrote, Dear Luann, and then wrote out the apology, and I gave it to my mother, and all I admitted was that I had gotten into a fight with somebody at school, and made it out like it was another kid. Mm-hmm. Then she signed it, and then I real quick erased the Dear Luann and wrote Dear Mrs. So-and-so.
Uh-huh.
And then brought it in. And then, of course, my father found out about it and was like, oh, you lied to me. You didn't even have the strength of character to tell me what had happened. You gave me this whole cock and bull story about how you wanted to learn your signature and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, I think I really hurt him with that. It was one of those kind of things, where the worst thing you can say to a kid is like, no, I'm not angry. I'm disappointed.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And he didn't yell at me or anything. He was just like, and I was like, oh my God.
You're right though. Sometimes it hits even harder, like, I wish you were angry. The whole disappointed thing is just devastating sometimes.
So as I mentioned, the follow-up question to that, more positive one. Do you remember the first person you helped?
The first person I helped, boy, as a kid, huh? It's weird that the hurtful ones always come right to mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the helpful ones are not as easy to come up with.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to me because when you're a kid, you're just always, everything is drama, everything is a big deal, so it's all fear and hurt. And in my opinion, maybe I had a fucked up childhood.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think I always like to think of myself as a pretty good kid, aside from some of the things we've already discussed.
Right.
Generally pretty good kid.
And nothing really jumps out at me.
It's okay. Like I said, not every question is going to land.
Yeah.
So, I guess let's touch on teenage years then. So moving into teenage years, what books or movies or stories do you think really jumped out to you in the horror genre from your teenage years?
There was kind of a lot of me, not like considering it beneath me, like I was just talking about. I did read Interview with the Vampire around that time frame, although I think it came out sooner. I think that probably came out in the 80s, that kind of thing. Yeah. But I read that as a teenager.
Was it part of like your school assignment type of thing?
No, very much not. That was kind of like still frowned upon. Do kids get that as school assignments now?
I think, if I remember correctly, and maybe you grew up in a different place than I did, but I remember when I was in high school, we had like this summer program where we were supposed to read a certain number of books that were on the list.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I had that too, but we didn't get anything cool like Anne Rice or anything like that. We got like
from what I remember, there was a whole list of books, and you could choose which one you wanted to read off of that list. And I just happened to pick Interview with a Vampire, but I think there was also Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was on that list. It was all, it was like, we don't care what you read. We just want you to read something that's going to be good.
Okay.
And And so they did have a list, but it was a very varied list in terms of what was on there. And I think for me, Interview with a Vampire was one of the things that was on that list. Anyway.
Okay. That makes more sense. Yeah, we did have something like that because I remember exactly what you're talking about. Like reading some like Tom Clancy and stuff, which again at the time would not have been considered a classic. It would have been considered kind of like, maybe trash isn't the right word, but definitely not something you would be assigned in school. But yeah, we did have a summer reading. What did they tell? They told us to read like 6 or 10
I was going to
books
say,
or
I
something.
think it was something like 6. Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, well, yeah. Anyway, getting off track there. But that's all right. That's the nature of a podcast, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's all right. I don't think I had anything much more to comment on. Oh, I do have one for you though. I did read The Inhuman Condition. So my sister, that was what, Clive Barker or Dean Koontz? I think it was Clive Barker. So The Inhuman Condition, it's a short story collection, and the one story in it is about the hands lead a revolution of the body parts. And I saw that, and I read the back of it, and I was like, oh my god, I need to read this. Story sounds amazing. I need to read it.
So when you say the hands lead a revolution of the body parts, is it like the hands like develop a mind of their own? Yes. They try and convince the other body parts to also leave the person?
Yes. No, all over the world. Yeah. So it was lefty and righty. They were kind of implied to be, knowing what I know about Barker now, I guess it would have been a gay relationship. But the way I read it as a kid was they were implied to be like husband and wife or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget. I think lefty cut off righty or something. Like one of them agreed to cut off the other one to go lead the revolution. Mm-hmm. And then it went off and had everybody cutting off their body parts, but always like in the back of his mind, he wanted to get back to his lover.
Oh,
so
nice.
that was
in
a
fucked up body horror way.
Yeah.
I gotta read that. That sounds good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. And another thing, now that I'm talking about it, so I probably one of my gateways as a teenager was short story collections, but I also remember picking up, I think it was called The Others. It contained the story that became They Live. I think it was called what was it called? 8 o'clock in the morning or something. So that was another one that leaned more towards horror than science fiction. But again, I was like, ooh, a science fiction collection, that will be cool. Let me pick it up. And then later to see They Live and be like, oh my god, I read that story and that kind of thing.
What'd you like about that story?
I mean, it was as subversive then as I guess it is now.
Mm-hmm.
I think They Live is as close to a metaphor that's not a metaphor as anything. Like, you almost just want to be like, just don't call them aliens. Just admit they're just other people.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I understand how they couldn't get away with being like, oh, by the way, this is how capitalism works. But it's such a like searingly close to the surface, commentary about how everything works, in this world. It's like, it's absolutely excellent.
You said that wasn't the one story about the body parts. That wasn't even the scariest story in the book. Was there? I'm curious what you thought was the scariest story in the book.
It was kind of just an interesting, the way we tie ourselves in these logical pretzels kind of thing. So there was a guy who is presented as this very holy guy. He's a wealthy, I guess it's the Middle Ages or something. And there's this extremely wealthy guy who's known for being very, very holy. And he gets it into his head that the best way to be a good person is to summon the devil and then trap the devil, and then the devil will never be able to harm anyone ever again. And like this was his plan, and he had the money and everything to do it. So he hires all these like wizards and what have you that are like, well, here's how you summon the devil. Of course, the ways that you summon the devil are to fall into depravity and to do increasingly worse and worse things. And so this guy starts out from this like holy roller, you not just a holy roller, like you genuinely believe he's like a good person and he wants to do good, and he just has this terrible idea that he got in his head, and then slowly he descends into depravity, And I guess I'll ruin the story for you guys and your listeners. But at the end, he, like, quote unquote, has summoned the devil because he's become the devil. Like, he went so far into depravity that he is now pure evil. And I thought that one was pretty freaky too.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, kind of makes me wonder if they decided to write the story based on that phrase to say, how can I twist that?
That may well have been even what it was called. It might have been called Good Intentions or something. Now that you're saying that, yeah.
What did you like about Interview with a Vampire?
So it's funny because I just remember that being a really dense, hard slog to get through. Yeah, I remember it being extremely boring, actually. I'm not sure why I made it all the way through. And I probably started the Vampire Lestat, but it just was not, like, jumping out at me either. I mean, it was pretty interesting. It just was, like, so much, like, backstory and,
So those are the
this and
things
that going on in New Orleans.
Like about it.
Yeah.
So those are the things that you didn't like about it. What did you like about it? Was there anything you liked about it?
I mean, it was kind of interesting, the vampire parts. I seem to recall Lestat being kind of fun and funny. And I think Anne Rice probably figured that out as well, because, what's his name? Lewis was just such a boring, whiny. That was a little bit, I guess that was a little bit before that became a trope, though, because the boring, whiny vampire definitely seemed to become a thing after that. So
yeah.
Maybe she was the progenitor of that. I don't know.
It's possible. I wouldn't be surprised.
I get you on the dense thing, though. It's funny how sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, because, like, for example, Poe and Tolkien can both be very dense, but and sometimes I just am not in the right headspace for it, and other times I'm just like, all right, yeah, let's do this.
For me, it was Crichton. He gets too much into math.
Any really scary dreams as a teen, or recurring nightmares as a teen?
I don't think anything really jumps out at me. Probably, a lot of probably some of the standard, like falling and that kind of thing. But I certainly don't have a dream that, like a nightmare that I still recall to this day because I was up in a cold sweat or something.
Okay. Anything in real life terrify you as a teen?
This is kind of taking it down to depressing level, but I was just the right age when Columbine happened. That was kind of a whole moral panic that was, pretty scary.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons. And I mean, not to be like too cutesy or anything, but like when you look at something like I don't know, the Dark Knight and the Dark Knight Rises, where they're talking about, you have anarchy with the Joker, but then you have fascism with Bane, and it's like what are your options here? And I remember that in 1999, it was like everyone was scared that we could just walk into our schools and be shot, like unusually so, because it was a brand new thing, it was a brand new concept at the time. Hell, I guess kids have school shooting drills now and stuff, which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
But like the idea that something like that could happen had never occurred before. And so for a while we had that anxiety and that terror. And then almost immediately the clapback against it was this descent into just absolute fascism. And it was like, are you wearing black? Are you wearing a duster? Are you wearing boots? Like just everything was like banned, and nobody could do anything, and if you were weird or a weirdo or whatever, I remember people being like, hey, you speak German, because I took German in high school. Hey, you speak German just like those Columbine kids. And I'm like, okay, 80 million people speak this language too,
right? Like it's a language. Yeah. I'm allowed to learn other languages.
Yeah. And then there was kind of the terror of the flashback, and I was like by no means like, I mean, I guess I was kind of a weirdo and a loner to some extent, but I was not like, I guess this is a horrible thing to say, but like, I was by no means like the way that the Columbine kids were. But suddenly everybody was taking a microscope to all the weirdos and the loners and being like, "Oh well, you're going to shoot up this school."
Yeah.
It was just kind of a panicky. The panic was bad, and then the moral panic that followed was kind of equally bad.
Yeah,
Mhm.
knee jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a guest on the show who got institutionalized for a while for wearing a trench coat.
You're probably thinking of Eric Savino, and he wasn't institutionalized, but he made the mistake of having a BB gun in his trench coat.
That's right. He had a toy gun too. But
Yeah.
it started with the trench coat. And was it around the same time?
Oh, no,
as
you're right.
Columbine?
Yeah, he
Yep.
did get put into like a boys' home or something like that, and there was a big uproar about that. Or at least he said there was. Yeah, there was something about that he shared in his interview. Flipping that question around, was there ever a time in your teens when you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
I was wondering when that one was going to come back around again because, man, as a teen, I was just a bundle of nerves. I'm not sure. I guess one thing that I do remember is well, it's funny. I guess they both have to do with sleep or going to bed or whatever. So my mother was really strict about my bedtime, even into my teenage years. I had to be in bed at 10 p.m., which seems, even in retrospect, seems a little ridiculous. Although, as I said earlier, I don't have kids. I don't know what it's like to raise kids. So I don't know. Maybe it's just what you do. But I was allowed to listen to music, on my headphones. So usually it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, well, I've got to pretend to go to bed. I guess I'll listen to music for a few hours, And I do remember times like that, trying to fall asleep where I felt, contented and happy. But yeah, I guess there you go for the armchair psychologists out there. All of my moments of contentment have to do with me going to sleep, I guess.
I mean, I get it. Sleep is content.
Yes.
Sleep is peaceful.
Good sleep, anyway.
Yeah.
So going into adult years then, what has really jumped out to you or stood out to you in terms of, as a fan of the genre in your adult years?
Well, like I was talking about, I guess kind of chronologically out of order earlier, but what really got me into horror as a genre was the zombie stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I got really hardcore into that in my college years. And so just once I had watched the Romero movies, then like I said, 28 Days Later came out shortly after that, and the Dawn of the Dead remake came out shortly after that, and Resident Evil was a little bit, it was like 2002, Vice, 2003, 2004. But then I just wanted to watch everything. So I was diving down into some of that stuff. And like I said, there was kind of that lapse. I mean, there were some things in the 90s. There was like Cemetery Man and some things like that. But there was kind of this big gap between of zombie movies, between the 80s and the 2000s or so.
It kind of was. We steered more towards like infection movies like Resident Evil and 28 Days.
And so I was digging down, like I said, Cemetery Man, and getting back to like Return of the Living Dead, which is one of my favorites of all time. Reanimator. What's that?
It's not a bad movie, Bert.
Yeah. And Reanimator, Dead Alive. Come to think of it, I think that might have been technically the 90s. And so I was getting into some of the really gonzo zombie stuff, and I am kind of a snob about this stuff. So like, there's a lot of stuff that people will like colloquially call zombie, like what you were talking about. Is 28 Days Later really zombie? No, they're really infected. Or like, is Evil Dead really zombies? Well, no, they're really possessed by demons. Yeah, exactly. But I get why these are all kind of considered, of a piece. So all of that stuff, I was consuming really hard in college.
You have said that, you might categorize 28 Days Later differently now, but you've brought it up twice, 2 or 3 times. So I wanted to ask, what did you, I'm guessing you did like something about it.
I like it. I like it just fine. Yeah. What I was getting at was, I kind of have a strict feeling that if it's, and I won't even say Romero zombies because I'm kind of okay with like Return of the Living Dead and some of the other different outlooks on zombies. But to me, a zombie is very particularly a dead thing that came back to life and is now, horrible because of that.
True, but you don't have to necessarily. How can I say this? You can like it for other reasons.
Right. But yeah, I like 28 Days Later. I actually think was the sequel 28 months later or 28 weeks later. I think the first 10 minutes of 28 Weeks Later is fucking brilliant.
Right? He's running away from the house.
Yeah, then the rest of the movie just kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, the original movie, it was very cool. It was very frenetic. It definitely brought two zombies, and I know that's the other thing people fight about, is it fast zombies, slow zombies, blah, 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 blah. I'm cool with both of them. And that kind of blew the door off of the can we make fast zombies interesting kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so. Apparently Romero hated zombies, or fast zombies.
He did, yes. But, can't blame him for that.
So other than it being frenetic and being interesting, in previous interviews we have sort of identified where there's two different kinds of interest in some of the stuff that our guests have been interested in. Some of the interest is as an auteur, like I like the way that this is done, and then but then there's also like the emotional reaction to something where maybe one's more cerebral and one is more emotional. And I think the emotional response to something drives more to the real root of what someone loves about something. Like we could talk about the cerebral stuff all day, but like did you have any kind of like emotional reaction to the 28 Days Later, or was that all cerebral?
See, it's interesting that you phrase it that way, because I think when you're talking about the slow zombies, the Romero zombies, and this is a lot of what the pleasure of watching those old movies is the problem solving. And you're sitting there and you're going, well, what would I do in this circumstance and how would I solve it? And then you're even, to a certain extent, I mean, maybe not while you're watching the movie, but what makes these things infinitely rewatchable is later on you're in the tub and you're like, well, what would I do in my house? Like you're out of the shopping mall and you're like, what would I just do in general? And it's a problem solving question, and it keeps you engaged. And with 28 Days Later, what the difference is with the fast zombies is you have to make the snap decisions. And it's much more emotionally jarring and wrenching. What was it? They had 30 seconds or something. I think that was deliberately so. Like, you don't have the days of watching Flyboy slowly turning into a zombie and deciding whether you're going to put him out. You have 30 seconds to make that decision. Can I put a bullet in my loved one's skull? Do I have the emotional bandwidth for that? And okay, there's something's coming at me. How do I get away from it? Where do I go? Where do I run? Like, I'm not making the best decisions. I'm not making those like I'm building a Lego castle. Like I can slowly construct the exact world I want to. It's like, well, I have to run behind this, cage in the airport or whatever they were in 28 Days Later. So yes, I think that you kind of get right to the point there, Steve. This is a much more emotionally raw movie. By making the zombies faster, you're constantly having to make decisions from your gut and instantaneously, and not being able to stop and think.
It's interesting because I'm thinking to myself, either way, there's still grief, but one is you're living through the grief before having to make the choice, and then the other one is having to make the choice and then feel the grief.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I was going to say, yeah, like you were saying, one's more emotional and one's more adrenaline, one is more cerebral and one's more adrenaline and emotional reaction. But
well, I think what's different there is
the grief
that
angle makes it different too.
Well, I think what's different there is that, and this it's not always the case, but if you're able to go through the grief process and come to acceptance before making the choice you have to make, or enacting the choice that you have to make, there you've got some sort of, maybe not closure there, but a lot more closure in comparison to being put into a situation where you have to act now and then maybe come to closure later, and that's a question mark because you may or may not be able to.
You don't have time for closure with one of them.
Well, you may or may not be able to go through the grief process after the fact and come to closure, but you also might not be able to. You listed a bunch of movies, basically zombie movies, for stuff that impacted you in your adult years. Was there anything not zombie related that has interested you in your adult years?
Why you gotta play that game?
We gotta hate on zombies, man.
No, not well. Just because there might be something else interesting that gets brought up in the discussion if we talk about something else.
One of the things that I did when I was in the Army and with my ex-wife, there just was not a ton to do in Oklahoma. I know, shockingly. So we would go to the movies sometimes 2, 3, 4 times, a week, and we'd go see almost anything. And we made a big, we would watch the Oscars every year, and we had seen every, Oscar-nominated movie. But then even the stuff like, the best technical editing, this and that, we had seen all of those movies too, because we just were in and out of the movies all the time. So I'm trying to think of what horror movies were coming out in that era. The Human Centipede. Why is that the first one that comes to my mind? Definitely a watershed moment. What all else was coming? The Babadook and Midsummer. I mean, these are not all necessarily like my favoritist movies, but
top of the head usually comes off top of the head for a reason. So let's start there with your Human Centipede.
I love the Human Centipede. I thought it was great. I thought it was brilliant. It was so transgressive. I don't think I've seen the second one yet.
Okay.
But just that first one, I thought it was so transgressive. And that's exactly what you want out of any piece of art that you create. And I know it's strange to call the Human Centipede a piece of art, but I mean, it really is. Everyone was talking about it.
Yeah.
It was
such a very well-made film. It's got good cinematography, good acting. Yeah, the second one is that plus black and white, plus just a little more focus on gore, a little less focus on deep story, I guess.
Right.
If you get a few minutes to check out our interview with John Skip, the first 10 minutes of our interview, he talks about his experience watching part 2 and using his terms, an art crime.
An art crime.
I don't want to ruin it. Yeah, I don't want to ruin it to you. It was a very funny conversation. It's like the first 10 minutes of the interview. If you have a minute just to go check that out.
Yeah, I love Skip. He's great.
So other than being transgressive, what did you like about Human Centipede, or was that enough?
Oh, well, Dieter Laser. I mean, come on. I actually love Dieter Laser. One of my favorite shows of all time is Lex.
Was he in Lex?
He was.
I haven't seen Lex in decades.
He was Manfred. He was the villain in the first season, and
that tracks.
But yeah, I just thought it was so everyone was talking about it. What a ridiculous concept. And I was like, it is ridiculous, but everybody's talking about it. Everybody's thinking about it, and it's kind of that thing we were talking before about any good movie. You put yourself in it. And I think everybody was going, well, what would I do? Where would I want to be? Obviously, nobody wants to be the middle guy, but do you want to be in the front or the back? Or I mean, obviously, you probably prefer not to be in a Human Centipede at all.
Yeah, that's right. Is zero an option?
Yeah, no, I just thought it was invigorating. It was reinvigorating to the genre. I remember saying at the time, I was like, this is the best horror film in years. And some of my friends were like, "Is it really, or is it just is it just that you're on the boat and you drank the Kool-Aid?" I'm like, no, it's got people talking about horror in a way that they haven't in a long time. And it's like you were saying, Chris. This is not just shock value. It's it's a well-made movie. It's kind of scary, kind of weird. I mean, definitely weird. The behavior is super weird, but
but it gets people talking.
Yeah.
So again, this pair of questions. Do you remember the last person you hurt?
I'm trying to think. I probably don't want to talk about that. That's
Fair
too
enough.
raw right now.
Fair enough. Do you remember the last person you helped?
I am glad you brought this back up because I was like, boy, I didn't help anybody when I was a kid, but I do actually help a lot of people now. So as a writer, this is kind of like an apprenticeship. I mean, it's not officially, but there's a lot of like, as a writer, you're expected to help out the younger writers and pull them up and give them what the older writers hopefully gave you. And I've been fortunate to have a lot of great mentors. Like we were just talking about Skip and guys like that. But I always say this, and people don't often take me up on it because I think they don't want to hassle you. But I'm like, it's genuine. I mean, I would rather that you talk to me for 5 or 10 minutes, or I'm happy to give you an afternoon or whatever of my time. I would rather that than that you go swimming with sharks, you get taken advantage of, you get fucked, and you hate the industry, and you never want to write again. I'm like, take my 5 or 10 minutes or afternoon or whatever, to avoid that. And I really do mean that, like, to your listeners. And if they're all going like, oh yeah, but he wouldn't help me. No, I mean, I'd be very happy to, because I've also been through the whole being fucked by a publisher. I've been through all that. And if somebody could have warned me and helped me, 10, 15 years ago, I would have been grateful, for that. And I'm just the kind of bullheaded person that I was going to power through, the shit and misery of this industry anyway. But not everybody has that, in them.
Are you a member of the HWA?
I am. I joined last year. I hardly do anything with it. I guess I went. I don't mean it in a negative way.
Right.
I joined more to.
It's just like one of those like, I got this thing and I still have yet to use it kind of things.
Kind of, yeah. I joined it more to support some of my friends who are in the leadership than anything else. I know when I. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. The reason I ask is because I know that mentorship is a thing in the HWA.
Oh yeah, and well, I see that's one of the things where it's weird. I'm like, I would rather volunteer as a mentor, but I'm not sure if anyone would take me seriously. But I certainly don't feel like I'm in the place where I still need mentor. I mean, not in the I have my snoot up way. I still need advice and that kind of thing, but I also have organically, people that I go to for that kind of thing. At this point,
there are always bigger fish and always smaller fish.
That is true.
Yeah. Anything in your adult life that has terrified you in real life?
Oh wow. This is. I guess you guys can tell I'm more of the cerebral than the emotional type as you keep asking me these questions, but. I am very scared about climate change at this point. And I live in central Pennsylvania here, and I remember being a kid, and spring and autumn were both, like a good solid 3-month long period where it was nice and cool. You open the windows, you enjoy the weather and this kind of thing. And I increasingly feel like there's no such thing. It's like a couple of days, couple of weeks of that cool period. And it's just like going straight from summer to winter, summer to winter, summer to winter. And it keeps getting hotter. Like, I remember we never got into the 90s. Like, it was a weird, freakish event if we were in the 90s. And now it's just like routinely we're getting up into the hundreds in the summer.
Yeah.
It's very scary to me. I'm like,
the scary thing is how many people disregard it and ignore it. Just like, this is a thing. No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It's not happening to me, therefore it's not happening.
Right? Yeah. The disastrous things won't happen in my lifetime.
But it is. And this is,
well, that's what
I know exactly what you guys
them, yeah. For them, they're geographically, I'm saying, it's not happening for them. So
right.
It's not happening to you.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of funny. And one of my elders in my family, I won't call them out, but they were talking about, they're like, and they're one of these people that's like, oh yeah, there's no such thing as climate change. Blah, 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 blah.
Right. When's the last time you saw a firefly?
I know. And he's just sitting there and he's talking about, I remember when I was a kid, we used to have such and such many snow days, and we used to have this much snow, and we just don't get that much snow anymore. I'm looking at him.
You're like, you don't say.
I know. I'm looking at him, and I'm like, you're almost there. You're almost there. You're 95% of the way there. Just finish that thought. Have things changed since the 60s? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's the kids who are wrong.
Yes.
It's the children that are wrong.
So, flipping that question around again, the follow-up: has there been a time in your adult life when you were completely calm or safe or bliss?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, times being with my fiance now that we've got a house, we've got kind of our shit together, I guess. Finally, yeah, definitely just times when. It's probably nothing very exciting or sexy for the kids, but like sometimes you're just sitting there on the couch and you're like, things are all right. We've got a roof over our heads. We've got enough food. We've got enough power.
I am sure that there are plenty of kids out there who are dying to have their shit together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this day and age, whether you're an adult or an adolescent or a kid, sometimes it's just a calm, blissful moment can be achieved by saying, you know what, I got something done today, or I at least these things are correct, or these things are doing okay.
It's a statement enough to have said that we've gone from I want to be a millionaire to I just want to have my shit together.
Right? Like, I want a solid gold rocket car and a $1 billion house. I want stability.
Yeah.
I have it.
We were talking about.
I have enjoyed the two Simpsons references in the last 2 or 3 minutes here. This is, coming from the guy that wrote Billy and the Clonosaurus.
Okay.
I am missing the reference there.
The Billy and the Clonosaurus reference?
Yes.
Oh, man. It was Skinner's great American novel. And this was around the time, Jurassic Park came out.
Okay.
So Skinner comes into the Quickie Mart and he's like, I'm finally going to write the great American novel. It's about an amusement park full of dinosaurs cloned from frog DNA. And I'm going to call it Billy and the Clonosaurus.
Mm.
And then Apu goes off on him. He's like, you stole the title. It was on the bestsellers list for 15 weeks.
Skinner is some of the best content in that whole show.
But yeah, then as an adult, I did have to write an actual book called Billy and the Clonosaurus.
Nice.
My favorite, tangentially related, one of my favorite memes related to the whole COVID-19 thing is saying about how we all owe an apology to, is it Crichton that wrote Jurassic Park? About, the realism of them reopening the dinosaur park after it had killed millions of people or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Crichton, we owe you an apology. That actually apparently could happen. And see, that's why Steve and I also did an interview with each other. And in my interview, one of my childhood fears, or I guess adolescent at that age, was I was legitimately scared of Jurassic Park because people are dumb assholes and will do things like this.
Yeah. So the next two questions are going to be over your entire life, not just any particular section, and not just horror. So it could be any genre. But what movie would you say you've watched more times than any other?
Probably Gremlins 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting choice.
Why that one?
You say why? I thought you said what movie have you watched more than any other?
I did say that, and now I'm asking why that one.
Oh, why did I keep one? Because I owned it.
Oh,
okay. No, I mean it is a delightful movie when you're 12. I'm sure it's fine when you're an adult too. But no, I had a copy, and it was madcap early '90s mayhem, and the gremlins get into the genetics laboratory. What more is there? What more do you need?
They had a spider gremlin.
They had a spider gremlin. They had a bat gremlin. Yeah, it was great.
Oh, I forgot about Bat Gremlin.
And then the follow-up question would be, what do you consider your favorite movie?
Oh, God, that is a tough one. But so you said not necessarily horror?
Correct.
Yep. Any genre.
Any genre. Favorite movie. I'm going to say Unforgiven.
Okay.
That's usually a strong contender.
Why that one?
Mm-hmm.
I think that is so quietly poetic. For one thing, I can never take my eyes off the screen when it's going on, and it's also one of these movies. And there's a few like this, like that I've watched many, many, many times, and I always see something new in it. And every time that I watch Unforgiven, I always spot something new going on in the background or in the emotions of the characters or something like that. And then just like the hypnotic the way they slowly draw you in and build up to the climax, it's just like rivet. It's like a spell, or it's like having a spell cast on you or something.
Westerns clearly definitely do have a way with the slow burn. That's for sure.
So I'm thinking all three of those. This goes back to the cerebral versus emotional. The quietly poetic that could maybe touch on both, but like the always finding something new and this hypnotic buildup, I think those more lean towards the cerebral. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with having a favorite based off cerebral, but I'm wondering if there's also an emotional component.
I mean, now that you say that, there probably is this big component where William Money is this broken, just this. He's broken, and his best times are behind him, or so he thinks. And he feels like he has to say that he is better now, but you can tell in some ways that obviously he misses the old days. So there's definitely. Even as a kid, but especially now, as a middle-aged guy, like that really appeals to me. That feeling of being like, are my best days behind me? Do I have anything to look forward to? Should I just like wallow in the past, or should I, buck up and deal with my responsibilities, and the responsibilities in the movie being his kids, and supposedly he's worried about his kids, but you also feel like, hey, let me strap on this gun and go have fun with Morgan Freeman, is like a chance to get back to the good old days kind of thing. There definitely is a looking at yourself in the mirror kind of element to that.
Going back to horror for a moment, and I think we've already answered this, but I'll ask anyway.
Okay.
Do you see any common threads about what you like? Cannibalism, occults, metaphysical?
Cannibalism,
zombies?
occults. Yeah, I do. I love all the zombie movies. I do. I love it when it's gonzo and over the top, and I know that's hard to. I know that like there's budget constraints, and there's also like only so much you can maybe do that an audience is willing to accept. But yeah, like when you look at something like Dead Alive or something where, look, we've established this is a horror fictional, place. Let's do everything. Let's throw everything we possibly can at the screen. I love stuff like that, and that's probably part of what's why zombie movies as a genre are so cool, because it's like you're looking at an army of the undead. You're looking at this whole wave of things going on. It's changed everything. Whereas like a lot of slasher movies, for instance, it's kind of like, well, if you can just extricate yourself from that situation, I guess you'll be fine. You have to deal with the slasher now, but fundamentally the world isn't that different. So yeah, I definitely like when kind of any horror movie goes for broke,
like world-ending events, all is lost kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Normally, this would be the spot where we would sum up any common themes that have been cropping up and maybe ask a couple follow-up questions based on that. I'm looking...
But we don't have to, because the common themes are clearly zombies. Nah, it's more than that.
I guess I'm struggling to find a good summary, but I'll just list a couple of the things that I'm focusing on. The main word that's coming to mind is emotional, but then there are certain things here, like you mentioned a second ago, gonzo, over the top, subversive has come up a few times.
Gonzo over the top could also be emotional, like the emotional response of, oh my god, the shock of it.
Sure.
In a fun way.
Yeah. So gonzo, subversive, nihilistic, jarring, or raw.
Ooh, Raw was a great movie. chicken fingers.
Well, what I was thinking about was the emotionally raw thing that he mentioned about 28 weeks. Was it 28 days later? 28 days later about, the emotionally raw and jarring and being forced to solve problems in the moment. Subversion came up in a couple different topics, but I'm trying to remember where I copied this down from somewhere else in my notes. Logical pretzels you had mentioned.
Yeah.
So there's, I guess, just struggling with extreme emotions, I guess, is the best summary I can give. Does that sound like that is an accurate summary for the things that you get out of horror? Or do you think there's a better description that I'm missing?
No, I think that sounds good. I think people, horror is like a safe way to grapple with tough emotions that people normally just want to shy away from. Yeah, I think that's absolutely a fair point.
Yeah, it's another theme, and I think a conclusion that's come up in several episodes is horror is a safe escape, or a safe almost therapy in and of itself, and a way to deal with emotions, or to safely words. Now I'm doing it. I had a point. It's gone.
So the first follow-up question would be, do you have any idea why it is that you like the topic of struggling with intense emotions?
I mean, the kind of the cheap cop-out would be that I have my own struggles with that. I've said this publicly before, so they're not breaking any new ground, but I do suffer from PTSD. And the PTSD presents in a number of ways, but one of the symptoms that I have to deal with is what's called a flat affect. And that's kind of like the no highs, no lows. You're very
gallows humor.
Yeah, you might say that. Like you're very kind of middle of the road. You can't experience great joy or great depression either. So I mean, in dealing with my own struggles with that, there's a lot of times where I'm like, I know I ought to be feeling this emotion, but maybe I'm not, and I struggle with that, and partially that makes it difficult for me to empathize and sympathize with other people's emotions. So I mean, yeah, it is definitely something that I have to work on and work out through art, which I guess will be safer than being some kind of sociopath and toying with real people's emotions to see what happens.
It's interesting. I had mentioned earlier in the call about how part of our goal in doing what we're doing is to say, not everybody's going to fall into the same buckets, but how many buckets are there? What are they? Who falls into, how many people fall into which ones, which are more popular or less popular? What you're just saying there actually reminds me a lot of something that we heard when we talked to an artist by the name of Martin Trafford, and is one of the less frequent things that we've heard. Not a lot of people have had that particular tack on things, if you want to say it that way. So maybe narrowing in on that, why horror? Are there any other genres where you can touch on those kinds of things, or do you think that horror is lends itself better to this, and if so, why?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps so, because I'm thinking, and I don't want to. I guess it's the reason why we have genres, I guess, is so you can paint in a broad brush. But I don't want to paint any genres with a broad brush. It was what I was about to say. But yeah, I mean, you could definitely do something like you could definitely have the depths of emotion with something like science fiction or a western or a romance or whatever. But I think horror is clearly meant to evoke those emotions. So like you're kind of failing at your job if you're not doing that, which may be one of the things that people like to shy away from. Like maybe why some folks don't care for horror is, oh well, I didn't really want to grapple with deep things in my heart. I just want to be entertained for half an hour or whatever. And of course there's some horror that's like that too, which is why I said initially I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush. But I definitely think that right off the bat with horror, you're trying to evoke an emotional response, even if it is just disgust or a jump scare or what have you. But really, the best horror is trying to evoke kind of a existential terror. If you can do that, you're kind of in the top tier of the genre. So I mean, you're tapping directly into emotions that people don't normally even want to acknowledge sometimes. And it's like I say, like maybe you look at romance, like I don't know, I don't feel like they're trying to evoke love, or they might be trying to evoke like erotic feelings or happy, warm, smiling feelings, but I don't think they're trying to get you to love. But I think horror, they're trying to get you to be scared.
Well, what you said there a second ago reminds me of the phrase I've used in the past is the color of the emotion, meaning, maybe these other genres do evoke emotions, but maybe there's something specific about the emotions being generated in the horror genre that it's the type of emotions that is specific to horror for you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thought we were going to start talking about synesthesia here for a minute.
Oh, wow.
That is also an option.
Emotion,
Yeah.
Is there anything that you have thought of earlier, maybe in the conversation, and then the conversation took a left turn and you didn't get a chance to say? Or do you think there's anything else that's relevant that we didn't ask about?
There was something I was wanting to really dig into, but now I can't remember what it was. I think it was just a movie or something. But no, I mean, I think this has been a really great, really kind of broad-ranging discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Good.
Yeah, we try to keep things very open-ended and see where things lead.
Yeah. Well, I hope I haven't been too constipated or whatever for that. I hope I've been forthcoming. There's actually a couple of stories I don't think I've ever told anywhere in these past 2 hours. So,
that's cool.
Job well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll put together a bio page for you on our website and link to your socials or whatever else you want us to link to. So we'll get together with you offline as a follow-up. Either way, based on that. Before we wrap the call, do you want to, again, let anybody know what you're currently working on?
Oh, sure. Well, so, basically, if you can spell it right, you can find me. My most recent release was a novella called Razortooth with Stevie Kopis, and then before that was We All Live in a Fascist Police State Now, thanks to this one fucking guy, which that came out.
That's the title?
That's the title,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which came out in November. So those are both on KU. That's kind of just an experiment that I'm doing. I'm putting a couple of things on KU right now, so folks can pick those up and read them for free. And then like I said, I have a couple things coming up. We're going to release that new Kit Power in the autumn. I'm going to release my short story collection probably in the next month or two, and start dusting off those werewolf stories if you're an aspiring author, because we are going to be French Press. We're going to be opening up Strange New Moons for open submission in September.
Okay, wait a minute. I think I may even have more inspiration to possibly do this werewolf thing. Now, did you say your publishing company is called French Press?
Yes.
I like coffee.
Good man. Good man. I should actually say French Press Publishing. My acquisitions editor yelled at me because, of course, Kozeniewski, the most complicated name in the world that can't be mistaken for anything. So I thought, I'll pick a real simple, real easy to remember, title for the publishing company. So I picked French Press, and then she's like, nothing comes up when you type that in because it's all
everything comes up when you type that.
It's all French Presses on Amazon, and I'm like, all right, let's go by French Press Publishing. So
funny thing. That's how we came up with the name of this podcast.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So Chris's webcomic, the current URL is piecesofflesh.com. Previously, it was pieces-compendium.com. And Chris and I and a couple of our friends are in the IT business, and we pointed out to him that number one, most URLs don't have a dash in them, and number two, who's going to remember how to spell compendium? And
It's not that hard a word. It's a compendium.
So while trying to brainstorm better URLs for him, I came up with Horror Makes Us Happy, and we thought it was a great URL. However, his comic is very not happy. So it was like, it's a great URL. We got to do something with it, but we can't use it for that. And this, what can we use it for? And well, then brainstorming that, one of our mutual friends asked, well, what is it about horror that makes us happy? And then that's where the light bulb, that's where the light bulb came off. And because my background is more psychology, I wouldn't really consider myself the horror fan. Chris is a big horror fan. And so once that question was asked, I was like, aha, this is where we can, I've got something I can bring to the table, and Chris has something he can bring to the table, and we can have this conversation.
So we are familiar with naming complications.
Sure.
Shall we say?
Yeah. Well,
I am, at least.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time. Like I said, we'll get together and put together a bio page for you, and anybody that wants to check out your work can come check it out there. And to anybody out there listening, please do come check us out at horrormakesushappy.com. We've got a list of all the different people we've interviewed there, people we'd like to interview. If you can put us in touch with any of them, let us know. Support us on Patreon.
Buy their coffee.
Like and subscribe and tell a friend and all kinds of fun stuff like that.